intellectual property, privacy, and image rights matters updated. Jennifer McCarthy, Director of Global IP and Brand Enforcement of Playboy Enterprises Inc., United States. Marc Randazza, Managing Partner of Randazza Legal Group, US. Moderator, José Roberto Herrera, Partner of Herrera Díaz Lawyers, Colombia.
Nice to be here. I really appreciate that you, after this nice lunch, you are here because of the, it's always difficult after lunch, so I really appreciate your assistance. Anyway, this panel also is going to be recorded as many other panels, but well, let's start. This topic of the adult entertainment industry, it was a webinar initially in which Marc also was a speaker in ASIPI, and it was one of the most attended webinars in ASIPI. And then in the executive committee of ASIPI, they decided to do this topic in person. And today we have, again, Marc, that is a great expert in this area, and also Jennifer, that as you have seen in the program, she's the person in charge, the attorney in charge of the brand and enforcement issues in Playboy, that is the most iconic brand in the adult entertainment industry. So we are really proud to be here today to talk about these issues. We, as mostly Latin lawyers, we have like an adult entertainment industry, but it's not that well formalized, I think. Usually this industry is really informal. So for us as Latin practitioners, this experience that they are going to share us is really important. And also, when we talk about adult entertainment industry in terms of global revenue, the numbers are huge. The numbers in the adult entertainment industry in the global revenue is $97 billion in comparison to the streaming in audiovisual like Netflix, Amazon. They have like 95, the global revenue, and the music industry is like 30. So in terms of global revenue, it's amazing how big is this industry. And also, of course, all the issues related with morality and freedom of speech. There are many case law that Marc will share with us about the morality and freedom of speech, because you know this topic always brings also the morality issues, that sometimes there is content and some authorities want to censor. And without further ado, I would like to throw some questions that I prepared today to both of them. First, I'm going to start with Jennifer, and thank you again, Jennifer, for accepting this nice invitation by the executive board of ASIPI. So the first question is just to talk a bit about yourself and your work in Playboy.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you. What am I supposed to do? Sorry, just press the button. Hello. Okay, there we go. Thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you to the board of ASIPI for the invitation. Just quickly before I get started with answering any questions, I just wanted to read a quick disclaimer. So my views and opinions expressed in the session are solely my own based on experiences throughout my career and personal life, and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of my employer or any organization that I may be affiliated with. So, had to get that out of the way, first and foremost. So again, my name's Jennifer. You can call me Jenny as well. I've been with Playboy for almost 5 years, and I've been in the field of IP for nearly 20 years, not to age myself here. And Prior to working in-house, I worked in patent prosecution for many years in the DC area. I really enjoy working in-house. I think it's very interesting, and some of the issues that come up are very unique. And typically, day-to-day, what I do overall is I manage our global IP portfolio of over 6,000 trademarks in 180 countries, and I oversee our worldwide brand enforcement program, including our anti-counterfeiting and sort of anything else related to intellectual property. It filters through me. I manage our vendors, enforcement vendors, and the relationships with our local counsel in all of the territories. So it's a lot. I wear a lot of hats, but it's very interesting. So, and I get to come to stuff like this. So this is great.
Thank you, Jennifer. That's a really nice experience that you have in the industry, and as I said, for us as Latins that we don't have like a formalized industry, knowing a person with your experience, it's really important to know what you're gonna tell today. And now to Marc also, what can you tell us about yourself and your law firm? We know that you work in a big law firm that is in this industry, so what can you share us?
Well, my career is mostly that of a freedom of expression lawyer in the United States. I'm sure you've heard of the First Amendment. So I am a First Amendment lawyer first and foremost. But what that means is you generally represent people who have problems with their expression. You know, nobody needs a First Amendment lawyer for Peppa Pig or something, you know, that isn't offensive to anybody, unless that offends somebody. I don't know. Everything offends somebody, right? But, you know, that meant early in my career it was mostly representing pornography companies, and not classy ones like Playboy. It was a lot of upstart internet companies, strip clubs, adult bookstores, and you really, the fun part about it is I never leave work without at one point that day my stomach hurting from laughing. You know, because when you're representing an adult entertainment company, and then sometimes a judge will look at you and say, do you really think that this is what Thomas Jefferson had in mind when he wrote the First Amendment? And I said, well, no, but you know, Thomas Jefferson probably would have said, let's go buy some slaves and we can have them perform any way we like. So he's maybe not the best guy to invoke. But so I started representing a lot of adult entertainment companies in the early 2000s when the American government was cracking down on them. And it was like the good old days of fighting the good fight for expression. But then, you know, back when as soon as the Bush administration was out, not to get political, it just happened, he happened to be very good for my income. If I had known how good he was going to be, I would have voted for him. But as soon as he was out of office and his Department of Justice shut down, the Obama administration stopped prosecuting porn companies. But that was a really good time to take a breath and start explaining to some of these small companies that some of them, when I started representing them, were just kids shooting porn in their dorm rooms at college. You know, now they're some of the biggest companies in the world, at least biggest porn companies in the world. And explaining to them, well, you know, you have intellectual property issues to be concerned about. And you'd be surprised how few of them had even considered registering trademarks or registering copyrights or enforcing their rights. So then that grew into a very large intellectual property practice specialized in the porn industry, which then, of course, when I did my LLM at the Università di Torino in Italy, and when I wrote my thesis, I, of course, made sure to write about that, morality-based impediments to the enforcement of intellectual property rights globally. And then I've collaborated with some co-authors on writing a follow-up to that for the South American approach. So today, most of my practice is still, you know, defending porn companies, but also assisting them with their IP issues. But of course, that always runs around to my other clients, which tend to be, You know, if you can think of somebody who would get in trouble for their speech, whether it's a protester, whether it's a porn company, whether it's a dissident journalist, I think, how many people here we have from Argentina? All right, I represented Jorge Lanata in a case in the United States where he was trying to break open some files that eventually became known as the Panama Papers. So that was no porn in that, but I consider it to be journalist porn, but not the kind of thing you can't bring home to your mother.
Thanks, Mark. And now,
pleasure.
also there is another big issue with the user-generated content, because the traditional pornography was through Playboy, Penthouse, that they were the kings of this industry. And right now, the user-generated company, not only in pornography, but in other industries such as audiovisual, now with TikTok. Also, the consumer is not seeing only Netflix, but also watching TikTok and everything, and seeing right now in pornography pages like Chaturbate, OnlyFans, all of this. And one of the questions related to IPs that I would like to start first with Jennifer is, what type of infringement in Playboy have you faced, and how have you usually handled this type of infringement in trademarks mostly or copyrights?
Yeah, so it should be no surprise there's a lot of infringement of Playboy IP because it's one of the most famous and well-known brands with 97% brand recognition worldwide. So we're also one of the most infringed brands in the world, and it's flattering, but also it raises a lot of challenges because we have to consider that when we're doing anything new, that anything we have to assume it's just gonna kind of worldwide potential squatter issues. We have to look at filings, we have to kind of be 10 steps ahead. And then we, like I mentioned, have over 6,000 registered trademarks that we're maintaining and enforcing in all of the territories. But we see a lot of counterfeit products, whether it's online or brick and mortar. We also have fraudulent websites where they're taking the content, whether it's magazine content, online content, or websites that are selling counterfeit products. In some cases, we don't know if they are actually selling products or if it's just a phishing scam, but we are constantly monitoring and taking down these websites that are trying to appear as if they are a Playboy affiliated website when they are not. And it's constant, where we're having to, it might be one letter off. We find out about them regularly, and we also have a lot of, there are impersonators that have impersonated publishers, photographers, and they target a lot of the models, and we get emails where we're getting asked if they're affiliated and they're not. People produce fake business cards, they have fake LinkedIn profiles, so it's sort of anything you can think of that a predator might do. We have to sort of prepare ourselves and approach things with proactively and reactively. So it's a mixture of monitoring and staying ahead of it, and then also being prepared and having everything in our arsenal to go after these infringements. We have a great network of foreign counsel, local counsel in the various territories, and we work with several enforcement and monitoring vendors so that we can better prepare ourselves. And yeah, there's a lot. I could probably talk for an hour just about the infringement alone, but I won't bore you all with that.
And one specific question with, for example, trademarks that you have filed in US or abroad, have you have like office actions about morality? Like sometimes that in other countries, for example, that you file a trademark and they say, no, you cannot register this because this is against public order or moral. Have you faced this?
Yes, we have. Most recently, we're actually finding this in China, which is surprising because we have a substantial portfolio in China, but we are starting to receive rejections of our trademark applications for morality, and so we're finding ourselves having to engage in administrative litigation in order to fight this so that we're not setting a precedent where we're just sort of put into this box and deemed the immoral brand in China. But we have also seen this in other countries, Middle Eastern territories, where religion ties in and they think that the Playboy mark or the rabbit head design, the bunny, they represent inappropriate or immoral content, and so they're not permitted, even if the trademark is only being used for t-shirts or hats, for example. So it's interesting, and it's something that we're constantly navigating and trying to find new approaches to break through in those countries.
Yeah, thanks. This is one of the topics that the outcomes can be really different in different countries. And yeah, you have to be prepared for this, working in the industry. And now to Marc, the same question, like the types of IP infringements that you mostly see in the industry, and not only IP infringements, but also like all these issues with freedom of speech and morality and privacy policy that you can share with us some cases about it.
Yeah, for infringements, we had, for example, a long time, we had a lot of cyber squatting issues. They would take one of my clients' names. I mean, I'm sure you've all dealt with this for clients. They take the name and they change one letter. You know, obviously sometimes people who are searching to go onto porn sites aren't all that careful about what they type in. They're typing with one hand, I guess, sometimes. But you know, put an extra R, leave an S off at the end, you wind up at the wrong site, and sometimes it's a pretty good spoof. We also had a very long period of time where we were enforcing BitTorrent theft. I mean, there was a lot of piracy through BitTorrent. That has largely died down because the tube sites are making the same service. But even the tube sites, you know, there was a time when I was representing content companies, and then the tube sites were taking their content, publishing it for free, which then devalued the porn companies that were producing it. So then the tube sites wound up buying up all of the producer companies. I mean, it was really an amazing change in the industry kind of about 10 years ago, where the tube sites and then the content creators, which were once at war, now are absolutely codependent on each other. But first you had to enforce copyrights on the tubes, then the BitTorrent stuff, and then, you know, now you also have branding issues. When it comes to the cam sites, which I have done work for Live Jasmine and Chatterbait and other cam sites. You know, it's funny when you're doing an audit and you're looking at something like that. When you do this as long as I've done it, you can watch a porn movie and you don't even see the porn. You know, it's just like The Matrix, and then all of a sudden you see, uh-oh. They've got a copy of Playboy in the corner, or you know, and I'm going to get a call from Jenny yelling at me, or you know, the girl will light up a Marlboro cigarette and have the pack there, and we're going to have some kind of infringement issues from them. But then you also have problems for the creators, where if they go do some content on a cam site, there's always somebody recording it. And then that can wind up on a tube site later on, and they had anticipated that this would only be a private performance. And sometimes you have problems with that. The other thing you have to police, of course, is you know, whether they're engaging in something that might be legally obscene, which is a very specific test in the US, and it's rarely met, but the content creators that I've dealt with, where we've had to give them warnings. They do get quite creative for their tips and their performances at times, so you can find that. With respect to dealing with different intellectual property offices and morality issues, I mean, this has been a particular focus of mine, not just professionally, but academically. This is morality and IP The TRIPS agreement does allow signatory nations to exclude protection in the case of morality or public order. And that rarely happens on the patent end, but in fact, the United States has completely abandoned that for patents. You can patent anything now, but like Canada and the EU seem to be drifting a little bit more toward exclusion of patents when it comes to morality. Like, for example, in Canada, they wouldn't allow the patenting of the onco mouse, which was a mouse that was actually developed to have cancer so that you could study it. But they said that patenting a living being was not allowed, but in the US it's allowed. When it comes to trademarks, in the US, I fought for years against what was called Section 2A of our Trademark Act, which banned the registration of immoral or disparaging trademarks. And that was, for me as a First Amendment lawyer, something that I wanted to attack, and I did for probably 25 cases or so, not winning any of them. But you know, they were really leaving these decisions up to the subjective judgment of an examiner. And the test wasn't even very exact. It was, would a substantial composite of the public find this to be immoral or shocking? I don't even know what substantial composite means. Nobody ever actually figured that out. It's not a majority, but it's more than just a few people. That provision of the Trademark Act finally fell in Mattel versus Tam, and then Iancu versus Bernetti. So now you can register just anything you want at the United States Patent and Trademark Office. There was a prediction that this would cause the collapse of the Republic. This has not happened, and people are, of course, registering all kinds of trademarks that they wouldn't have been able to get away with, and that you generally can't get away with in other countries. Now, what I'm finding interesting, though, about Jenny's experience is that whenever I've run into one of these issues, it's always just a focus on the mark itself, and does this mark disparage a group? That's usually a very easy one to find a problem with. Or is it somehow vulgar? But in the case of the Playboy bunny, there's nothing vulgar about that symbol. And in fact, you know, maybe it says something about how jaded my worldview is, but you know, it doesn't even represent a particularly, shall we say, edgy kind of pornography. You know, Playboy is almost mainstream media now. So I have not run into that in either my professional or academic research. But then when it comes to copyrights, you have an additional challenge. You know, in the US, there were 2 cases in 2 of our courts of appeal, and this has not yet reached the Supreme Court, probably because the answer is well established by these 2 courts of appeals. But there was the Mitchell brothers case was one where the court was asked to determine if you could enforce the copyright in a work that was obscene. Now, if it's obscene, you can go to prison for it. But our IP laws are strong enough that it said the courts in both of those cases, in the Ninth Circuit, which is the western part of the US, and the Fifth Circuit, which is Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, both agreed that even if somebody is sitting in prison because their movie was so bad that a jury said they have to go to jail for making this movie and selling this movie, and if you can imagine how bad it has to be now for someone to go to prison for it, you know, you might understand how difficult sometimes my job can be. Watching a movie, if somebody brings you a porn movie and says, watch this and tell me if I'm going to go to prison for making it, it's never a happy day at the office when you have to watch that. I wind up calling my mother afterward and asking her to tell me a story, even though I'm over 50 years old. But even something like that, you couldn't enforce the copyright for it. However, TRIPS still does allow member states to exclude content on that basis, which creates interesting international issues. Like I studied a couple of cases in Taiwan, for example, where homemade porn in Taiwan could not be enforced. The Taiwanese government said we're not going to allow copyright protection for anything that's pornographic, but because they're a signatory to TRIPS, they can't discriminate on the basis of content for foreign content. So a Japanese producer sued in Taiwan, and they had greater rights than local Taiwanese porn producers did. And the fact that it was Japanese porn, I don't know, there's something about losing World War II that makes your porn industry somewhat distressing, but that's probably more of a different issue. I wouldn't know if I would allow it to be registered either. So yeah, it really does present. It's really a lot of fun because it's never the same old thing. It's always some very cutting-edge legal issue because, frankly, not many people want to deal with it. There was a long period of time where my firm was essentially built on the fact that a lot of large law firms were afraid to touch pornography work. Most of my work comes when a call comes into my firm and they say, this is just too crazy of a thing for us to touch, so we're gonna have the client have you handle it. But when you're looking at these issues, the porn industry isn't just coming out with regular run-of-the-mill intellectual property issues. It's really kind of establishing it like it did in the Bernetti case, getting rid of Section 2A, and Mitchell Brothers when it came to protecting copyright, even when it comes to legally obscene, illegal content.
Wow, this is many case law that is really interesting for me. It was really new, and I think that is a really common issue, this thing of the webcams that, for example, it can be for example, a toy with the logo of Playboy, and what happened here, because it's not a professional production where they don't have a clearance usually, and it's everything improvised. So those issues are really interesting. Right now, I would like to switch from infringements to mostly the challenges and threats that you usually faced. Jennifer, in your daily life, what challenges and threats do you face in Playboy in your work?
Well, it's still going to be infringement related because that's the majority of the challenges that we face. But online piracy and counterfeiting have become much bigger because of technology. So now we're not just seeing it on a small scale, we're seeing it everywhere, and it's a lot easier for bad actors to copy and distribute any sort of content online. So that's presented a challenge. We see this with our images, videos, and web content. In some cases, entire web pages and websites are replicated. And consumers don't know how to discern and identify what's real and what's not in a lot of cases, and that's presented an issue where they're getting targeted and they're getting scammed when it's not the real web page. And cyber criminals can obviously hide behind a wall of anonymity and privacy protections, so it's harder for us to track them down. So it's kind of, I know everybody knows the old saying, it's we are playing whack-a-mole and constantly sort of chasing down different avenues. It's as quick as they pop up, they're gone again, and then we're having to start over, and it's constant, it's never boring, and we're just seeing so much that we constantly have to adapt and innovate the ways that we're addressing everything. So.
And in your case, Marc, which?
I think the key word I took out of that was innovation, because it does seem that the infringement industry is extremely innovative. But I've also found some of my clients have innovative approaches to it, where, for example, I have a couple of clients who, instead of enforcing their copyrights, decided that they would embrace piracy as a marketing tool. They calculated that, well, if they make a movie and it only requires 10,000 paid customers out of the billions of people on the planet who might be seeing it. I mean, if you go onto, say, Pornhub, I mean, Pornhub has like 2 billion impressions a day. There's only 8 billion of us on the planet, you know, and if you kind of do some mathematics, I mean, really, that's like something like half the people every day. More, you know, what gets thought about more in a day, porn or the Roman Empire? I'm not sure which one, but it's like a constant flow of potential traffic, because you do have in the industry, especially in the niche product industries, people who serve very, very, very specific fetishes, for example. You'll find what you have is super fans, people who you could give them 10 links to download the content for free, and then one that says they have to pay $50, and they'd be happy to pay the $50 because they feel more engaged with the product. They're also finding ways to use that to then harness bringing those users over to direct contact productions, meaning like a cam site. So you pay $50, you get a subscription to the website, which you could have stolen for free, but they're big fans of it, so they pay for it. Then that gives them the ability to then sometimes interact with the talent, which makes them spend even more money. And you know, you wind up with some users spending tens of thousands of dollars a month. So if you can harness, say, 10,000 superfans, and that costs you 10 million infringements, it can still be worth it. But working on issues like that, you know, creates a whole new set of terms and conditions you have to write, and then ways that you want to do that. So it's fun when you can sit down with some of these small companies that can move. You know, there might be only one decision maker there. There isn't a board like you might have to deal with. You know, there aren't concerns about what's this going to do to our brand. Our brand is a micro brand anyway, so we can pivot on a dime and change things. But the other challenges that we run into, of course, are always government intervention. You know, there is always a, you know, porn is always a political football. So when you have a more, perhaps, I wouldn't say conservative necessarily, because you never know which direction this censorship comes from. Sometimes you have extreme left-wing censorship, which says, well, this is disparaging towards women, so we can't have pornography. And I try to explain, well, there's gay pornography, so how does that square with your philosophy? But then you have extreme right-wing politicians in the US who want to ban it for morality reasons. That's always, you know, changing and morphing. So right now there are a lot of focuses on age verification, which not just verification of the models, which of course I don't have any issues with that, except, you know, the way that that's enforced is sometimes troubling. But then they want to have age verification for people who view it, which seems like a great idea, right? Nobody wants to distribute porn to children. But how do you check that on the internet without then just simply limiting adult access to it? And really, that's often the point of these laws, is to simply make it impossible to do business as a porn company in these various states. And then you also have, you know, the big O, obscenity. You always have concerns with what is going to be legally obscene. And that's and those cases are always they're very, some I would say philosophically confusing, because if you think about it, pornography is not something that anybody's ever forced to watch unless you're on the jury in an obscenity trial. So then you have 6 people sitting there who never wanted to watch this movie. They got brought in for jury duty. They're being compelled to watch it. And then they have to say around their neighbors whether or not they approve of this content or not. And so sometimes the government will actually bring these in very liberal jurisdictions where you would think you wouldn't have a problem. For example, there were some prosecutions in Tampa. I don't know if anybody's been to Tampa, but it's, let's just say Tampa's can be a very fun place. It doesn't really have a whole lot of what I'd say, it has some conservative elements in it, but I think per capita more swingers clubs than anywhere else in the world, so why would you have a problem distributing pornography there? The one place that the government has to date not brought an obscenity prosecution in a very long time is Las Vegas, which is where my main office is, mostly because you're going to have people there who, you may live right next door to a stripper who makes $500,000 a year in Las Vegas. What's respectable there is sometimes different than what it might be in, say, Charlottesville, Virginia. But the challenges are generally piracy in the government, but the funnest challenge, I think, is the funnest way of reaching that challenge is when you have a client that wants to get creative and innovative about not just enforcement, but harnessing it for their own good.
Yeah, and the censorship is, all the censorship issues are, you make me remember recently, for example, in Colombia, there was a song that was, it was like a collaboration with some reggaeton artists like Maluma, J Balvin, and many, and there was a big discussion on the lyrics, because they say that the lyrics were really sexual and talking about a city, Medellin, where there is many prostitution with minors. So people they were complaining a lot about these lyrics, and they even started a legal action in order to block the song. Like 2 days ago, the song was, the decision was issued, and the judge says that it was not accepted because of the freedom of speech, and in the end, the artist changed the lyrics, but I know that there are many positions, and it's not an easy topic to discuss, but the way that not only the music industry, the pornographic, the audiovisual, is through ratings, yeah, because in not only in reggaeton, but only in other type of music, you see lyrics that are really polemic, I think, and that's why ratings are very important for minors. Of course, the presence of parents is really important. So this is also really applicable in this type of industry. And right now, like thinking about it, like the technological advance, Jennifer, that we have many advance in technology that can help you to find infringements or manage IP. This is one of the last questions that I would like to throw you regarding the technological advances. What has been Playboy doing with this in order to manage the IP cases or attack the infringers?
Yeah, so recent technological advances have definitely raised both new challenges and new opportunities for us. These tools have become instrumental with our searches and getting information more quickly, but at the same time, there are also more places and more opportunities, and we're seeing more of the infringement. So it's a good thing and a bad thing. So we're just trying to stay ahead of it, and we have to adapt our strategies to protect our IP assets more effectively. And one way is obviously staying informed, and I attend a lot of conferences and stay up to date with everything that's going on. And we're also having to look at updating our trademark registration coverage and what we can do with our existing IP, if we can update that and sort of strategize what we're doing moving forward to be more in line with these new strategies. So for example, with NFTs, it feels like it was like a blink, but we were frantically filing and trying to get the sufficient coverage for NFTs, and just as quickly as it rolled in, it feels like it's sort of rolled out. Maybe it'll come back again. Everything that's old is new again. In fact, not to completely segue, but we are 2025, we are re-releasing the paper magazine, the publication. So who knows, in 10 years, maybe NFTs will come back, yeah? And currently, there's a Playmate search looking for Playmate of the Year with the re-release of the Playboy magazine. But I've been reviewing and auditing our current practices and our current coverage to identify where we need to expand, and the new technologies also really raise complex questions that I think for all of us, and protection of IP that's generated by machines. So it's sort of I think in a lot of aspects, it's a wait and see approach with some of it. I can speak from the legal side, but from the business side, I know that we're holding off in implementing any sort of artificial intelligence in any of our content for the time being, but I would not be surprised that if we start very soon. So we're just sort of waiting to see what happens and see new case law and.
Yeah, and of course, this topic of, do you have more other issues to include, or?
Well, I was also just going to share that we are currently testing a pilot program for some new AI fingerprinting and semantic search tools that will help us detect and track more unauthorized use of our images within video content. So, or images and video content within video content. So sort of what you were talking about earlier, where something is maybe in the background of a video, like these tools will actually be able to help us identify that without having a clearance team or someone sitting there watching all of them and trying to identify it. So that's something that we're currently in the process of testing. We'll see how that goes, but we're always looking for better ways to identify infringement and stay ahead of it. And yeah, like it's.
That's a really interesting issue. So you're saying you're looking for the use of images in the background of other productions?
This tool does identify that, yes.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've had a couple of cases where artists, so painters, have gotten upset that a client might shoot a porn movie and then their artwork happens to be on the wall. It's incidental use, but they get extremely upset about it. Background issues in producing porn are always, they're always an interesting case study. For example, I've dealt with a number of Airbnb hosts who get very upset when then they tune into their favorite porn site and then see their Airbnb shown in a porn movie. There really isn't a real right to do something about that, but there's always somebody looking for a way to make a dollar off of it. So there's always been some claims of publicity rights in the design of your home. I've also had people claim emotional distress from it, and I find it difficult to mask my contempt for that claim, but it's people making those claims are how I am able to buy very nice things. So I guess I'm okay that they want to keep doing it. I had a client a number of years ago who was doing their specialty was they were shooting. They were advertising that all of their actors were real college students. Might come as a surprise that many of them were not, but they would kind of paint the set to be the colors of a certain university and have the logos and the mascots. For example, the University of Florida is orange and blue. You would never put those two colors together ever. For any other reason except to show that it was the University of Florida. Well, the University of Florida would, send a letter or two. Florida A&M University was another one that got quite upset because let's just say they were portrayed in a very negative light in this movie. We also find, I was thinking about other issues that we deal with as far as privacy issues. I mean, it's not quite IP.
Yeah, and that's why I was thinking, of course, we cannot forget about artificial intelligence, and I was thinking about all these issues with revenge porn.
Yeah.
If you can share us about this, because actually with deepfakes and all this is really common right now.
Yeah, I do a lot of revenge porn cases. And those are where, somebody shares intimate photos with their, I mean, it's almost always a boyfriend. I don't know, women just don't do this. They have a little more class than men, I suppose. But, guy breaks up with a girl breaks up with a guy, and the guy decides to publish all these photos. I wish there could just be like a general council of men where we could get together and be like, don't do that, because that makes women not want to share the pictures, dude. But I do enjoy enforcing that norm, because when they do that, it can be very harmful. I have a case where an ex-boyfriend sent all of these images to a girl's family, and actually caused a big family fight. And it's like, does he think it's going to get her back? But he also used AI to generate her engaging in sexual activity, which I don't know if she never did it before, but she certainly never did it on camera. So in doing that, it's an interesting question, because there are laws that say that you can, in some states, that you can't distribute unauthorized intimate photographs of another person. But if it's AI generated, well, how is that any different than drawing graffiti? It's just a better form of creation. It's just a much more sophisticated cartoon. And then you have states trying to keep ahead of that, saying, well, you can't use somebody in a deceptive way. And then these laws that were passed for that reason, for example, in our last election cycle, were used to try to shut down political speech. I mean, we had, there were people creating images of the candidates in our election engaged in pornographic activity. And I don't think anybody thought for a moment that, Joe Biden decided to star in a porno movie, or, and if they did, I don't know who would want to see it, but it was, elder abuse, I guess. But when you look at that, and you look at how that confluence of expression comes together, on one level, I like taking these revenge porn cases, because I feel like I'm helping somebody who's being bullied and abused. But the very techniques that I use for that can be used against something that is nothing more than a political cartoon. So I have at my law firm, I have in all of my engagement letters, I do say to my clients that I will not cause harm to the First Amendment or freedom of expression, nor through inaction allow harm to come to it. Stealing the intellectual property of Isaac Asimov for that, I guess. So that is one of those razor's edge issues where I'm always thinking not just what happens if I lose this, but what could happen if I win? Will I later be arguing against my very own precedent? And that does happen. But AI is creating a lot more fun. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, and more work, I guess, also.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we have 10 minutes left, and I didn't want to just to speak the three of us, so the idea is to do it as well with you. So I think that we have a space for like 3 questions or 2 questions. I would prefer it if you throw it in English, but in case you want to do it in Spanish, we have translation for you, but I can also do my best effort to translate. So if you could, anyone that would like to have a question here.
Hi everyone, this is Christian from Chile. I was taking really close attention, especially to the final part regarding the AI issue, which I would say is more than an issue actually. So the question would be, I know that there's more questions than answers in this topic, but how you both think that we can shed a light, or we can take the first measures on that issue, like reacting or controlling to the production or creation of ANA content, simulating, I don't know, actress videos, actress photos, or everything could be. So it's such a vague topic. a new topic that how should we start like regulating it? Just a general idea, because I wouldn't say that we can have more information unless until now. So that would be.
I don't know that you can. You know, it's like when I first got into this industry and broadband wasn't even universally reaching every home, you didn't have to worry about piracy as much because it took so long to download a pirated movie that it didn't matter. But with technological leaps and bounds, now you can download a whole movie in a few minutes. Similarly with AI computing power, I think you're just going to find that it is either unregulable, because you can pass all the laws you want. I mean, we have, for example, like I was talking about revenge porn, like 48 states in the US have revenge porn laws. Most of them are criminal laws, so you can go to jail for doing it. And nobody ever does. I mean, you have to make this a priority. So if it's illegal on a criminal level, you have to get a prosecutor to care, you have to get someone to do something about it. As far as civil remedies go, well, if, for example, Playboy decided to make an AI-generated, image of me in its latest production, probably wouldn't make too much money, but I could at least have somebody to sue. But what if some lunatic, out there in the audience right now is videoing us, and then they make an AI-generated movie of us, and they have nothing? You can't have civil remedies against somebody with nothing, so I think the more, and I can't say that I'm intelligent enough to tell you how to harness it, but I think at some point it's either got to just be drowned out by other content or find a way to harness it the way some of my fetish clients have found a way to harness the use of piracy. I just lack the creativity to be able to come up with a way to legally regulate something that every day the computing power seems to double as far as what it can create.
Yeah, and I think that agreed with sort of proactive, but for reactive approaches, just staying aware, and that's why we're testing these new tools that are going to help us identify the infringements more quickly that are, potentially AI-generated images, and I'm hoping we're also seeing this actually with Meta. I saw on the news recently that because these scams and fake accounts and impersonation accounts have become so frequent, they're testing new AI facial recognition technology to verify accounts and to help people protect themselves. So I think that will be interesting to see. They're rolling out the testing actually this month, and then next year they'll have it across all of their platforms. But tools like that, I think, will potentially help at least restrict where we're seeing it. So social media is a place where we see a lot of this. So, and maybe it's not preventing it, but I wouldn't be surprised if they potentially build that into their takedown tool, or there's some mechanism that's specifically for AI-generated scams and infringements that we can report on that basis instead of just trademark or copyright.
Other questions? Oh, there's one there.
Hello, Juan from Colombia. Thank you all for this panel. I think that it's way different than the normal panels that we are used to visit or watch or see or listen in the IP world. I will just probably keep the question of Christian, but just probably land it into another area. And it's a little bit more about strategic thoughts or thinking of both of your companies. In my opinion, I think that for Marc, it's quite obvious that you enjoy a little bit the AI and saying that, yes, it just makes it funnier and brings more fun to the business because you're in the side of the law firm. So probably it will bring way more cases to you. But in the other side, for Jennifer, I think that Playboy, for example, the question actually is, what's the strategy for Playboy or traditional porn companies to just tackle the impact of AI? Because I think that AI right now is probably also diverting a lot of market, a lot of revenue, and probably traditional porn companies are just laying behind or are staying behind in the different trends that actually are moving the industry. So if marketing or traditional marketing was television or radio, for example, and now it's influencers, now I think that the same is happening with porn. So I think that the question is more directed to Jennifer, now that I'm clearing my thoughts a little bit. But what would be the strategy that your company would take, or Playboy, or the traditional players in the market would take against AI for the diversion or the diversification of the industry? Because clearly there are way more players now than before.
Okay. So I can only say so much for confidentiality reasons, but I think, not to just reiterate what I already said before, but I think staying informed and ahead of what's happening and knowing like the newest technologies available for us to enforce, I think that's going to be the approach, at least from the legal side, sitting on the legal team, that we take. On the marketing and business teams, I can't speak to what they're planning on doing on their side in terms of our own content, but it's going to be, I think if we had this conversation 6 months from now, like I could probably speak to it more, because it's just it's rapidly changing each day, and yeah, sorry, I can't sort of share much more than that.
I could foresee something where, for example, with like user engagement, I mean, I have clients who, you know, they years ago that you could write in and pay, you know, a couple $100 and have one of the porn actresses send you a personalized message, and it was just all in good fun. But you could, and then I've you know, I frequently have had people call me and say, I have a great idea. How about if I make my own porno movies and I pay women to have sex with me and then I film it? Doesn't that make it porn and not prostitution? And I always laugh at them and say, yeah, you must be the first man to think of this. Let me get you your Nobel Prize. But I could see a way of the user engagement model where you could, and the superfan model, where you could get somebody who could upload a photo of themselves and say, you know, give me a 3-minute video, or I don't know, if they want to make it more realistic, I don't know, maybe longer, but a 3-minute, you know, make a video of me having sex with Playmate of the Year, doing certain things. And if she authorized that use of her likeness in the AI context, you know, it could be a way to generate revenue and harness the computing power rather than try to find a way to enforce around it. Patent pending.
Well, there's also a separation, I think, with the magazine being softer, right? It's the Playmate of the Year probably isn't going to sign off on her likeness.
I'm thinking of my clients, you know, kink.com or fucking machines.
We have the Playboy Plus side, which has our adult content.
Yeah.
So, but that's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, and
I want 10%.
And this thing, I think that it was a very interesting question, and I think that as consumers, there is nothing more deceptive than seeing like AI models and not knowing it. Like I think that even when right now they're regulating the AI, there is a responsibility, liability, that you have to tell the consumer that the advertisement, the content is AI produced. This is already regulated in some countries. And of course, we in this industry, I think that it will not be that interesting if Playboy goes like many industries right now in the audiovisual market. There are only movies that are just AI movies, but the consumer is not knowing this, and of course, this is also violating some regulations about AI. So, well, we have 30 seconds left. I think we don't have more space for other questions, but I would like to finish just for thanking you again. I thank you for your participation, and
Thank you.
I
And
will
if
ask
anybody wants to chat after, I mean, feel free to come up and we can talk more.
And thank you, of course, ASIPI, for this nice invitation here.
Thank you.